So I've got a little girl that was sitting on her grandpa's lap. She felt his face and she said, "Grandpa, you're so wrinkled." So she felt her face and it was so smooth. And she was very quiet. And her grandfather said, "What are you thinking?" She said, "Grandpa, I am thinking that God has really improved, hasn't he?" Okay, so let's go back to that song. Many years ago, I had been urged for several years by a friend of mine, Dr. Roger Teal, up in Mile High, to try agape. And I resisted. And I had a life that was up and down, in and out, and struggle, strife, the whole human scene. You know, one still in college, two had just got out of college. I was working all kinds of hours, and just life was a struggle. So I walked into agape that morning, having no idea what I was going to expect. And I can go into Reverend Michael later, but I walked in and this beautiful man was standing there. And at the time he channeled. So he would just put it, there was never a podium on that stage. Nobody ever got you even got and talked or you didn't. He put his head back and he just channeled for 30 minutes. And he talked so fast, I didn't understand a word he said. But something inside of me, I still get the chills, transformed. I left that church that day. I didn't know metaphysics, never even heard about it, and I was different. But when I heard Ricky's song, that's when I understood the words. Michael's words hit me at a deep soul level that I didn't quite understand yet. Ricky's song, you see, I always thought that we used God. We used God as the great God in the sky that we asked for. We had our requests. This is what I need. This is what I want. And why am I not getting it? Maybe I'm not praying correctly. Maybe I'll go to heaven. Maybe I'll go to hell. All of the things that I had been taught growing up. But this was different. All of a sudden, I could understand at a level, not like I understand now, but something changed. God could use me. Me, who can barely survive right now. I was all over the place. I mean, it wasn't that I was out in the street. I was doing well. I had a home. I had everything one could think of, except I was lost. I was empty inside. I don't know if any of you have ever felt that, but I was empty inside. One time, years ago, when I was living in Dallas before I moved to California, I sat in St. Michael of all angels. I sat in their chapel, and it was so beautiful, and I couldn't stop crying. I thought, I'm so empty. I'm so empty inside, and yet I've got so much to be grateful for. So when I heard Ricky's song, this wasn't until about 10 years later, that God could use me? What a concept. Do you mean my life may have meaning and purpose outside of struggle and strife and trying to get bills paid and kids taken care of and problems? That God could use me. That I really came into this lifetime for meaning and purpose. And that I could represent the power and the presence and the love of God through my life. Now, I didn't get that all at once. I studied for a long time. But just the thought of it, think of it, that God needs you, God needs us to light its light. Because if we don't, how does the face of God show? The face of God doesn't show when we're thinking heaven, hell, we live in fear, God's not answering my prayers, what am I doing wrong? We are the prayer, and that's the truth. We are the chosen one. Do you remember Mission Impossible, where he picks up the phone, and if you decide to accept this mission? Well, I believe, and Charles Fillmore also believed, that there was so much more to reincarnation, to many things, whether or not you choose to believe that. But I'm quoting Charles Fillmore, that we came into this lifetime with an agreement, but we forget. The minute we're born, it's like we have all this information and we forget. So it's remembering that we came into this lifetime to bless life itself. That's what we're here for. And doesn't that switch your whole thought process? Instead of thinking, what is God going to do for me, this lowly little person on earth? taking the power back and saying, and what am I going to do for God today? As Ricky sang, and I'll tell you how that song started. Reverend Michael had a dream one night. This is when he was first starting out. And the dream was so profound, these words came right through him. He got out of bed immediately. He wrote them down, and he called Ricky the next morning at 6 a.m. He got her out of bed, and he said, this just came through, Ricky. He said, I think this has great meaning. Will you put it to music? And that became the opening song for the last 35 years at Agape. It has changed countless lives. Do you remember the story in France after World War II? And the war was just about to end, and the GIs were in a Catholic church in France. And the statue of Jesus, God bless you, had been destroyed. And they were putting it all together, except the hands and the feet. They didn't have time. They were told to leave. But then he hung a sign around the neck of the statue of Jesus. And it said, I don't have time to finish, so you must be my hands, and you must be my feet. So that is our charge, to remember who we are and what we're here for. We're not beggars on this earth. We are here for meaning and purpose. And if we accept the challenge, if we accept the assignment, our lives change. Synchronicities start to happen. Blessings start to happen. We become a different individual because all of a sudden, it's not praying to some God out there thinking maybe I'll go to heaven, maybe I'll go to hell, who knows, maybe purgatory where I'll burn till I make one. I mean, that's just not what we believe. We believe that we are here to anchor the heaven on earth through our own knowingness that I am here to bless life itself. You know, when Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the co-founders of Unity, for many years they struggled and they strived. She was very, very ill. Charles was crippled, so to speak. He had a definite deformity. One leg was 3 or 4 inches shorter than the other from an accident, and they were struggling. They were struggling to make ends meet. Myrtle was teaching. Charles was selling real estate. And one day, Myrtle was truly despondent, and she heard of a man by the name of M.E. Meeks. Now, M.E. Meeks came from Chicago, from the teacher, God bless you, from the teacher of all teachers, who was Emma Curtis Hopkins. And she was metaphysics to every cell of her body. And so he was giving a lecture in Kansas, and Myrtle went and heard something different. She heard healing is possible. Within each one of us, there is a healer. Within each and every one of us, there is a purpose besides struggle and strife. Within each one of us, there is a purpose to be more than we could ever imagine that we could be. And from that point of view, they started Unity. Now, it wasn't at first Unity, but they started a movement, and it ended up being the word the magazine at first. But they started something where people began to heal. Myrtle healed from tuberculosis, unheard of in those days. Charles's leg grew. And these aren't just stories. These are actual documented facts. And their teaching, which is a metaphysical teaching, changed lives. People became different. And now it's all about metaphysics. It's all about growing. The scientists are now proving what the theologians are way behind. It's about a quantum leap. It's all about a different level of consciousness. We can stay at this consciousness of struggle, of strife, or we can take a quantum leap, which is a huge leap into a different world that is constantly calling us, come, come. You are more than you could ever imagine. The presence and the power of this universal presence, whether you call it God or the grand operational design, is always calling you. Come, come. You are needed. You are my beloved in whom I am well pleased. And we have the choice. Do I say yes today, or do I just absolutely decide, I don't think so today. I think today I'm going to complain. I'm going to think about isn't that the truth? So we have a choice between living in two worlds. And as I've said before, whenever I decide to give a sermon, I can rest assured, I could bet you $5 that something will happen in my life that will disprove or try to disprove. I was happy as a clam Tuesday morning, at peace. I hadn't been feeling well over the weekend with something I ate. Anyway, I was happy, I was at peace, and the thought came to me, and a text came through. I knew it. And it was so upsetting. It really was. And my first thing was, I'll react. But we know better than that here, don't we? We respond. Take a deep breath. I never answered. I got settled. All is well. All is well. Then I got, true story, from next door neighbor, came across, and it said during the 4th of July, on the block I live in, and the next block, there were so many cars broken into. Went out to my car, and it was like a snowflake. Papers everywhere. My car had been broken into. So again, a deep breath. Do I get into, oh, why me? I mean, isn't that a great one? Why me? I live this great, good life. Yeah, but, well, you tell the universe that and see how many, they say God is the great hide and seek. Can you see me in this? Well, at the moment, I wasn't seeing anything but papers everywhere. So I did what we do here. We take the necessary steps, call the police, and then we get recentered. And all I could think of is my job right now is to bless whoever broke into all of these cars and know that they must have such a poverty consciousness to do all of this damage. So I was able to come back to myself, bless, Reverend Michael used to say, bless the mess, and just recenter myself. Because years ago, I would have been hysterical. I really would have. The title of my car was gone. It was just, but that's life. And it's how we're going to handle life itself. Life is always problematic because that's what we're here for. And again, can you see me in this? Or are you going to go back into the world of effects? We are here to anchor the kingdom of heaven on earth. That's what we're here for. We're so much more than we know. We're on assignment. The world is very seductive, isn't it? Pulling us out of, if you know what's going on in the world may end in the morning. You're not using the right toothpaste. That's why you can't get a relationship because your teeth you don't have enough hair, you have too much hair. It's a crazy world. It really is. And we can take it with a grain of salt, or we can think to ourselves, which is the truth always, I am more than this. And that's not from ego. That is from the place within that I am, the I am of me. That's the only time God ever named itself with Moses, when Moses said, who shall I tell the Pharaoh sent me? And God said, tell them I am sent you. So the I am within each of us is so powerful. If we're willing to go back within, the I am of me is so much more powerful than the toothpaste or whatever they're telling me out there, because I have a higher purpose. I can listen to this if I have to, but know that that's not who I am. That's not the world that I have chosen to live in from all eternity. But after we come into this lifetime, I told this story, so forgive me, but it's so profound. A couple of weeks ago about the little baby that came home, and the new baby, and the daughter wanted to go see this baby, and the parents were afraid she was going to pick the baby up. They didn't, but the little girl insisted. And when she went in, they let her in, they cracked the door, and what she said was, tell me about God. I am forgetting. And that's what happens. We come into this world, these new beautiful babies, with all of this information inside of us. We have accepted that assignment or we wouldn't be born. But then we hear all of this. We are parents, and God bless them, nothing wrong with that. But they instill their fears, their doubts with us. And it's for us as we grow and grow to know, again, anchored in the fact, I have meaning and purpose in my life. I am here for God. I am not here to buy into the world of effects. Are you with me? So I am what I am, and that I am power. The promise is, I will never leave you or forsake you. I am with you always. And that we can depend on. There's not much in life we can depend on the outside world, because it's temporary. But the promise is, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I am with you always, and I am the I am of you. And when we turn into the I am of me and of you, all the power lies there. That's where the power is. That's where we are uplifted. That's where we can go when everything seems to fall apart for us. That's where we can go, and that's where we can be anchored in. God is always more than any situation, any heartbreak that we may go through. So it's all about, do we know who you are? Do we know who I am? Do you know who you are? And when we leave here today, I hope you can take a deep breath and know I am more than I ever thought I could be, because not from ego, but I know who lives within me. I know what I am here for, and that is to represent the power and the presence, the gift, the love, the peace, the joy that God is. And how do we know God? We know God through qualities. All the avatars have told us, the philosophers, we know God is love. God is beauty. God is peace. God is divine order, divine right activity, joy, not happiness, joy. So when we are in those qualities of love, of peace, of joy, of grace, we are then representing the kingdom of God. We are then that place where when people see us, they may have no idea what they're seeing but there's an essence about us. We walk into a room, I've seen it over and over again. Someone walks into that room. I'll just use Reverend Michael. When Reverend Michael enters a room, it's breathtaking. I don't know how many are familiar with Ram Dass. Some of you. I had the opportunity of not only being in a seminar that he gave, but I got a chance to shake hands and speak to him shortly. And there was something. It was so profound because you could see within him, he was so anchored in who and what he was, that everything was lifted. And when we walk into a room and we are anchored and know who we are, no judgment, we walk in because we are representing love, peace, joy. Everything lifts. People lift. People's lives change simply by looking at us, simply by a kind word from us. We are invaluable, not from ego, but from the standpoint of who we are. So the next point I'd like to talk about is celebrate the temporary. Oh my goodness, celebrate the temporary. You know, Clyde Reed many years ago wrote a book, and it was called Celebrate the Temporary. And you know what? Life is temporary. All relationships are temporary. Everything is temporary. And where we get caught up is, I think, sometimes when we think it's permanent, it'll never end. So we enjoy life, but we also hold it lightly, because every bit of happiness, every bit of joy, we enjoy it, but it's all temporary. It will end. So there again, to be so anchored in the fact that God is more than this, I will survive, but it's temporary, to be grateful. You know, I've shared about my son, my younger son, who is, you know, it's not like he's out in the street. He's successful. He's got 3 children. And 9 years ago, he decided he was no longer speaking to his sister or I, nor could we see the children. Well, it was so heartbreaking. I can't even begin to tell you. But I got to the point a few years ago. Now, I have seen my son. Last year, we've seen him twice, not the children. But I got to a point where I thought, I'm going to celebrate the temporary. I'm so grateful for the 46 years that I have known him, that he's been in my life. and it's all temporary. So all I know to do, and it was so hard, tears, rivers of tears, is to thank God. I celebrate the temporary because that it's all temporary. And then I became at peace with it. And once I became really with peace with it, to celebrate the time he was in my life, he showed up one day at my door about a year ago. Nothing permanent, he comes and goes. But the main thing that I'd like to say is I celebrated what I had. Spouses come, spouses go. Best friends come, best friends go. It's temporary, but we're here to celebrate what we have right now. Because if we know I have a good friend who has gone through 2 very challenging divorces, and she just met somebody, and she really liked him. They had a lot in common. They're in a different state. And she said, but I just don't know if I can do it again. I can get hurt, and I just don't want to be devastated one more time. And I said, well, that's up to you, certainly. But if this opportunity comes, everything is temporary. Enjoy it while you can. It is a gift. Take the gift. Know that it is temporary. And no matter what the heartbreak is, if we are truly anchored in the knowledge and the presence of God, if we're truly anchored in the unity faith that tells us one life, one activity, that life of God is our life, then we can withstand anything. Howard Thurman, Martin Luther King's, not only his teacher, but his father's teacher at Boston University, wrote an essay once, and he said, you have a choice. Are you solid or are you a seed upon the wind? And I thought so much of my life, I was a seed upon the wind. I was bounced here and I was bounced there and whatever the wind took me. That's not our job anymore. We are supposed to be anchored in a knowledge that no matter what happens, there is something inside of me that will survive this. I will survive because I know that within me is the power, the presence, and the love of God that has made a promise that I am with you always. The I am of us is with you always, and you will survive. You will get over this because the grace of God is always there for us. So we don't have to be afraid of a new relationship or a new friendship, thinking, oh my gosh, what if they leave? I'm better off without it because I don't want to be hurt again. Well, we can choose that, or we can choose to know to celebrate the temporary because it's all temporary. The only thing that is permanent is the I am that lives within you and I. Are you with me with this? And the last point is the gift of an ordinary day. You know, a Hallmark movie did years ago. It was called The Gift of an Ordinary Day. I never forgot that movie because when we have a gift of an ordinary day, without the phone call, without the text, nothing to upset us, that's where the work is. Because, you know, many years ago I told the story of the 3 little pigs, and it's so profound. You know, one builds its house of straw or one of hay or whatever. However, one builds its house of stone, and no matter what happens, that house cannot be blown down. So on these days of peace and of quiet, that's where we start to reinforce ourselves. We read our material, we study the Fillmores, we study metaphysics period. We start studying the quantum level. Do I want to stay at this level, or am I going to move ahead into a different level? Am I going to be a deeper believer, a more profound leader, a more profound spiritual being? So when those storms of life come, and that's one thing we can absolutely be assured of, the storms of life will come. Will our house be blown down? Will it be destroyed? Or will we be that rock that knows, yes, life comes and goes, but the only thing that remains permanent is the power and the presence and the love of God, which is always with us. That stands within each one of us. It's up to us to reach out, to know it's there, to solidify our faith. One of the great many years ago, I read and it was from Josh 24:15 from the Old Testament. It said, "Choose ye this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we choose to serve the Lord." I still have that right over my sink. I read it every day. So we get to choose this day whom we will serve. Will we serve this great God of the universe, whether we call it God or the grand operational design? There is a power and presence that is a universal presence out of which all things are made. We get to choose. You know, I quoted the ancient Dhammapada, it was 100 years before Christ. I am what I think, having become what I thought. Where will our thoughts be? What will we choose this day? Who will we serve? Will we serve God? By serving God, we're serving our fellow man? Or we will just be blown like a seed in the wind? Oh my gosh, this happened and that happened, and we live in the drama. We get to choose, and we as unity people, we as great metaphysicians get to know the truth. All things pass. Saint Teresa, that's another thing I have. St. Teresa wrote, and she was a great philosopher in the Catholic Church. She said, "Let nothing disturb thee, let nothing upset thee. All things pass. God never changes. God alone survives." Let's take a deep breath. And so it is. Amen.